In the Money is made possible by financial support from Old National Bank and Chicagoans like you. Thank you.
Good evening, Chicago, and welcome to In the Money. I'm your host, Tamara Dervin. There's a saying that says, with great risk comes great reward. Some people hear that and immediately think about investing. But tonight, I want us to think about entrepreneurship. Every entrepreneur you see, every business owner, every founder, every person selling a product or service made a decision at some point to bet on themselves. And let's be honest, that's not easy. Starting a business can feel risky. There's uncertainty, sacrifice, long nights, setbacks, and moments where you question if you're doing the right thing. But for many people, entrepreneurship also represents freedom, flexibility, purpose, and unlimited earning potential. Because while a traditional job may feel more secure, your income is often tied to what someone else is willing to pay you. Entrepreneurship opens the door to building something for yourself and creating opportunities that may not exist otherwise. Now let's be clear, this journey is not always up and to the right. There are highs and lows, wins and losses, good seasons and hard seasons. And entrepreneurship is not for everybody. That's why tonight we're asking the question, is entrepreneurship right for you? Maybe you've been thinking about starting a business, but fear has been holding you back. Maybe you already have a side hustle and you're wondering if you should take it seriously. Or maybe life has shifted unexpectedly, a layoff, downsizing, burnout, and now you're trying to figure out what's next. Tonight, we're going to explore the real journey of entrepreneurship, the risk, the rewards, how to choose the right business, how to start, and how to access the capital you may need to grow. On the other side of the break, I'll be joined by entrepreneur Jamhal Johnson, who transitioned from working a traditional 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship and built his own beer brand. He'll share his journey, the lessons he's learned along the way, and the moment he realized entrepreneurship was the right path for him. So if you've ever wondered, could I really do this? This conversation is for you. Stay with us.
They say television is about sitting back. We say it's about stepping up. Your block has stories worth telling. Your neighbors have voices worth hearing. Chicago has a heartbeat worth sharing. Stop watching their world. Start showing yours. It's time to tune in and be seen. Can TV, always here, always yours. Experience the power of community television.
Welcome back. My first guest is Jamhal Johnson, co-founder and chief financial officer with Moore's Brewing Company. Welcome to In the Money, Jamhal.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
So people often hear the word entrepreneur and they think entrepreneurship is sexy. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but they don't really understand the work and the sacrifice that goes into that. So I'm glad that you're here to talk about your journey. So before we actually get into where you are right now, let's go to before you were actually a full-time entrepreneur. What did life look like for you financially and professionally?
Well, professionally, I was a corporate tax accountant working for Big Four accounting firms, doing tax compliance and consulting. It gave me a solid career. It was stable income financially, it paid well, but I always knew there was something more for me to do in the world.
So what was that moment that pushed you to say, okay, I want to explore entrepreneurship?
Well, I always aspired to be an entrepreneur, but there was one defining moment that I can remember. It was actually maybe 4 or 5 days before COVID shut down the entire world, and I attended a concert of a group that I'm a fan of, and I ran into an old friend unexpectedly from those days of me doing concerts and events, and I went backstage, and it just brought back so many memories of a time when I enjoyed it. It just made me realize what I enjoy to do. And it just sparked something in me to find a way to build something that incorporated both my creative desires as well as my business background.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about some of the challenges. We know that there are some real challenges in entrepreneurship. What are the things that are challenging that people don't talk about enough?
Well, I think the one thing that people talk about a lot that I think needs more attention is access to capital. Access to capital is very difficult for small businesses, especially minority-owned businesses. But I think the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the mental toughness that you need to possess as an entrepreneur. There's going to be tough times. There's going to be some self-doubt. There's going to be some, fear of failure, especially doing so in public, right? So that kind of hinders you and makes you question, why you ever got into it in the first place. But in those times, you just have to remember your why, get recentered and why you started in the first place. So
I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people don't, before they start, they think more about the business versus the reason why they're actually taking that. And I've heard other people say that. So I'm glad that you said that again, that people really examine why they're actually desiring to step into entrepreneurship, so they have that at the forefront of their mind when those tough times come. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about, you said that you were in a 9-to-5 and you said it was paying well.
Yes.
So what shifted in your finances when you stepped away from your 9-to-5?
Well, I didn't step away right away. It took me a couple years to really get the business going and commit fully. And obviously there's some fear there, right? You're used to, your income, you think about how life is going to be. But I just made the sacrifices. I got disciplined and focused more on my needs and less on my wants, and prioritized the business.
That's good. I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the things when we talk about just managing finances, looking at needs versus wants. And so personally, it sounds like you made some sacrifices to say, okay, these are my needs. I'm going to focus on this for this time period to build this brand.
Correct.
So let's talk about this. Why a beer brand? Why did you decide to do a beer brand, and what made you confident that this would actually make money?
Well, at the time, I had saw a number of African American owned wine and spirit brands emerge, but I didn't see anyone going into beer, which I like to have from time to time. And I just saw it as an opportunity. In light of some of the recent success of Modelo and other culture-led brands. I just thought it was a great opportunity for, an African-American brand, to enter into the all-white beer space. I just saw it as an opportunity.
And I'm glad you said that you saw an opportunity, because a lot of times people, when they think about a business they want to start, they think about just what they want. They don't necessarily think of where there's an opportunity for them in that space. So can you tell viewers, what are 2 to 3 things people should research before they start a business?
Yeah, well, I think number one, you have to research the industry that you're desiring to enter. Just understanding just the landscape, where things are. I think that helps you navigate your approach, right? How do you differentiate yourself from the others? What's your value proposition, right? The second thing is, identifying who your customer is, right? Focusing on that, right? You don't necessarily need everyone to be successful, but you do need the ones that are you're fulfilling a need for, And obviously, I should have said this before. What need are you fulfilling, right? What problem are you solving? I think you have to really identify and choose what the world needs, what the market needs, and you can be creative in your approach.
And doing that, yeah. I hope viewers are taking notes because you just dropped a lot of gems that they need to really sit down and actually think about before they start. So how can someone tell if they've done that research, they figure out who their customer is and all of that, how can they tell if it's going to be profitable and not just something that they like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really just a formula, right? You have to consider the cost it's going to cost you to produce your product or service. You have to consider what it will cost you to operate your business, and then what you want out of it, like what's your desired income, and then make sure you price your product or service appropriately, and also consider the amount of volume that you need to meet your goal. So it's really just a formula. You know, you have to know your numbers.
So is there a quick way that people can test their product before they go all in?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to prove your concept. You know, you have to start at a comfortable level and build your business in a way that it can grow and can scale. You expect it to scale. You expect it to grow.
Thank you so much, Jamhal, for joining us. I hope that people were really taking notes because you dropped a lot of gems, especially if they're thinking about starting a business or they have a side hustle and they're thinking about making it full time. So thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
for having me.
On the other side of the break, I'll be joined by Pierre Dunagan. Stay with us.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
Joining the conversation now is Pierre Dunagan, business advisor with the Illinois Small Business Development Center at the Joseph Center. Welcome to In the Money, Pierre.
Oh, thank you, Tamara.
Thank you for coming. I know that our viewers, your practical experience with the Illinois Small Business Development Center will be invaluable to our viewers. So thank you for coming today. So let's start in breaking it down. What are the first three steps someone should take to actually start a business?
You know, the first thing you want to do is really look at the product that you're going to offer. And then once you understand that product, you also want to take a look at the entry point. So how are you going to enter the market? So whether that is through using online sales, retail sales, you also want to have an understanding of where the need is for that product. So you want to look at demand and then how you're going to deliver that product differently than others. So like, is there a gap someplace in the market? So that's the way that I would go about it.
So a lot of times we have our ideas and we kind of know, okay, I want to do it this way, but we don't have our foundation, our structure done properly. So let's talk a little bit about how do people know what business structure they should choose, like LLC, Corp, and then within Corp, like how do they choose the proper business structure based on the business they want to do?
It depends on the business. If you're starting a smaller business and let's say you don't have a lot of partners, I'd probably recommend an LLC. If you are going to start off and you're going to have, more partners, or you need a more complicated structure, then you'd probably go with what's called an S Corp or a C Corporation. But the benefit of either one is that there's a protection for you. So it protects your personal assets from any suits or whatever. Also from a tax standpoint, you don't want to pay personal income taxes on business income. So these are all three of the entities I just talked about are what's called pass-through. So the income passes through, so you're only paying taxes on it once. You're not paying it at a corporate and a personal level, but you also get a lot more write-offs when you bring it that way. Going with a sole proprietorship, I don't think is the way to go because it's too much liability.
Okay, all right. So those are some good things to think about. So one, of course, this is in the money. And so one of the things that's a part of business is finances. And a lot of times when people are starting, they may have a structure, but they may not have their financial structure set up properly. Can we talk about how important it is to set up personal and business accounts and finances from day one?
Again, it kind of goes back from a liability standpoint. You don't want to intermingle you may use personal funds to put in the business, but you want to delineate it when you're making those contributions, because you could do it as a loan and then have it come back to you where you're not paying taxes on it because it was a loan. Also, if there's from a tax standpoint, it makes sense to do that. But again, from a liability standpoint, if something goes wrong with the business, you don't want your personal assets, being part of the company. And sometimes people will overdo it with that. They put their personal car and everything else under the business. But if the business goes under, then you can lose that. Yeah.
People don't think about that part.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what tools or resources can help someone get started quickly.
The first thing I would say is a good business plan, because you really want to understand what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And if you're going to get financing or whatever, a bank is going to want to see a business plan. The same thing with the whether you're using investors, and even for yourself, is giving you a guideline with goals and benchmarks so you'll understand how to get it done. And with the Small Business Development Center, we help people do that, and it's free.
I'm glad you said that. Small Business Development Center, it's free resources.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the money, because a lot of times money and capital can be a barrier for people actually starting their business. First, let's talk about it. Do people typically need a lot of money to start a business?
It depends on the business. Sometimes you can do something. So like if someone wants to start a restaurant and they don't have a lot of capital, I generally suggest start with a catering company, because that would be a great way to get in the food service industry without the capital expenditure, big outlay for real estate and all of that. Another thing is that you can also use crowdfunding to raise money from friends, relatives, family members, etc. And then there's also grants through what's called the Illinois DCEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So those are some ways to get started. And SBA has what's called a SBA Express program for startups.
Okay. So with a lot of those programs, let's talk about the SBA. What do lenders, because that's a lender, what do lenders and investors typically look for when they're giving funding? If you're a startup, they're looking at you first. So they're going to look at your credit. They're going to look at how well you've managed your own finances. The other thing they're going to look at is do you have any experience in the industry? That can make a huge difference, because if you have experience or contacts within that industry, it's easier to ramp it up quicker, because when you're talking about sales, you're already going to have a customer base that's there for you. And all you're really doing is just transferring, from one thing to another. So if you were working in sales, selling a particular product, and now you're going to open a company to do that, you already have the relationships. So for our viewers, if they are interested in entrepreneurship, or let's say they've been doing a side hustle and they say, okay, I want to actually venture more further into this field of entrepreneurship, what's one thing someone watching can do this week to move their business idea forward?
That's a great question. I would start talking to potential customers to ask them, is this something you would buy? And you talk about the pricing and all of that. And I would also, and a way to do like a competitive analysis, if they're already buying it from someplace else, I'd ask them, is there anything that the company that they're buying stuff from could do better or worse or all of that? And that's how you find about gaps in the industry.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pierre, for joining us. I hope our viewers were taking notes because you dropped a lot of good wisdom and tips for them in their entrepreneurship journey. So thank you for joining us today.
Invite.
On the other side of the break, Ben Joergens returns with a fresh installment of Money Matters. Stay with us.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
Here now with this week's installment of Money Matters is Old National Bank's Ben Joergens.
Today we're going to keep it simple. Entrepreneurship just means you earn money by running your own business instead of working for someone else. That could be anything from cleaning service to catering to a trucking company to selling products online to doing hair to offering childcare. Here's the big idea. Entrepreneurship can be a great path, but it's not the best fit for everyone. And that's not a failure. The goal is to choose what matches your life and your personality and your money situation. Quick self-check. Let's go through 6 questions to ask yourself. Do I solve a real problem? What do people complain about or need help with that I can do well? Do people actually pay for it? Not would they like it, but will they pay? Ask a few people for honest feedback. Can I handle uncertainty? Some weeks will be great, and some weeks will be slow. Can you stay calm and keep going? Am I willing to sell? Even if you're the best at the service, you still have to ask for the business, follow up, and promote yourself. Am I organized enough? Basic stuff, appointments, receipts, pricing, responding to customers. And do I have the support at home? Time, childcare, transportation. Entrepreneurship often affects the whole household. 2 quick myths to clear up. Myth number 1, if I start a business, I'll be my own boss. In reality, your customers become your boss. You're solving their problems on their timeline. Myth number 2, I need a lot of money to start. In reality, some businesses do, but many start small. The bigger question is, can you start without risking your rent, your food, or your utilities? Money basics. Let's keep it simple, but do it. Separate the money. If you can, keep business money separate from personal money, even if it's just a separate bank account. And know your numbers. What does it cost you to do the job? Time, gas, supplies, and what do you need to charge to make it worth it? You need to plan for slow weeks. A lot of businesses don't fail because the idea is bad. They fail because cash gets tight. Try to build a small cushion. Make sure you save for taxes. When you work for yourself, taxes may not be taken out automatically. A simple habit. Set aside a small percentage of each payment in a tax jar savings account. Protect yourself. Think about basic insurance needs and written agreements, especially if you're doing work in someone's home or handling their property. A low-risk way to test entrepreneurship. If you're not sure, don't quit your job tomorrow. Test it first. Do a small pilot. Maybe serve 3 to 5 customers. Sell 20 items. Do 2 weekends of jobs, whatever makes sense for your idea. And then ask, did people pay? Did I enjoy it? Did I make money after my cost? And could I repeat it? Here are some signs that it might be right for you right now. You like learning as you go, and you don't need everything perfect before you start. You can communicate clearly and follow through. And you're okay hearing no and trying again. You can keep basic routines, scheduling, tracking money, responding to people. And here's some signs that might not be the best time. And remember, that's okay. You don't have any time to give, even 2 to 3 hours a week to start. You're already behind on essentials like rent, food, utilities, or you're in a crisis season. Focus on stability first. You hate talking to customers, setting prices, or asking for the sale, and you don't want to learn those parts. Maybe you're hoping the business will fix money problems immediately. Most businesses take time to build. So here's the takeaway. Entrepreneurship is a great option when you have a real service that people will pay for. You're willing to market yourself, and you can manage the ups and downs. If you're not sure, test it small before you go all in. Start simple, track your money, and build from there.
Thank you so much, Ben, for providing those practical tips so people can really assess if entrepreneurship is really right for them. So we can't go without you doing a dad joke. And today the word is going to be entrepreneurship.
Well, it's interesting. So I had a friend who wanted to get in the clown business. His dad was a real successful clown, but I told him, you got big shoes to fill.
On the other side of the break, this week's money moment. Stay with us.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
As a woman of faith, I want to leave you with this piece of wisdom. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. Tonight's conversation was about more than just starting a business. It was about purpose, preparation, courage, and honestly evaluating whether entrepreneurship is the right path for you. And for many people, the journey toward entrepreneurship starts with an idea they just can't let go of. Maybe there's a problem you've been thinking about solving. Maybe there's a service you know people need. Maybe there's a product or opportunity you've been sitting on for years. Many entrepreneurs start by recognizing a need and deciding to bet on themselves and their ability to provide value. But let's be real, entrepreneurship is not easy. It takes discipline, consistency, sacrifice, patience, and a willingness to keep going through both highs and lows. That's why I don't believe entrepreneurship is for everybody, and I don't believe every idea is meant to become a business. Passion is important, but research, strategy, and preparation matter too. My hope is that tonight's episode helped you think differently about your dream. Does your idea solve a real problem? Is there a demand for it? Do you truly have the mindset and work ethic to build something over time? And remember, entrepreneurship doesn't always mean quitting your job tomorrow. For some people, it becomes a full-time business. For others, it begins as a side hustle that creates additional income and opportunities to build wealth. Here are your action steps for this episode. Number 1, get clear on your vision. Ask yourself, what business, service, skill, or idea have I been thinking about pursuing? And do I want this to be full-time or a side hustle? Number 2, research before you risk. Study your market, identify the problem your business solves, create a basic plan, and start exploring what funding or capital may be needed. Number 3, use the resources available to you. If you need guidance, connect with your local small business development center for support, tools, and business assistance. Your next opportunity may not come from waiting for someone else to hire you. It may come from building something yourself. On the next edition of In the Money, we'll explore paying for college and managing money while on campus. And Ben Joergens is back with a fresh installment of Money Matters. In the meantime, if you have any questions about tonight's topic or any financial question, send them to me. Email me at tamara@moneybasicsonline.com or follow me on Instagram at @IamMoneyBasics. Also follow my guests on social media. I would love to keep this conversation going, so let's connect. Remember, we are on this journey together to get, stay, and grow in the money. See you next time.